What's going on, guys? It's Kyle here with Gnarly Knives, and today we're going to be covering, as promised, the K390 version of the Spyderco Endura 4. This is a really cool knife. I mean, I figured I was going to like it anyway. I already love the Endura 4, as, you know, I have the ZDP 189 version, which is actually right here. So if you have an Endura 4, you get an idea of how the Endura 4 looks. And to anybody who is really good eyes, you'll be able to tell that, in fact, yes, the blades are shaped a little different. This I dropped. I discussed it, I think, in the video, but I've mentioned it a couple of times. I dropped this shortly after getting it. It was over my girl's father's house. I dropped it right on a floor tile, you know, like a kitchen floor tile, and it just straight snapped the top, you know, it's funny looking at them now. It was probably like not quite a quarter of an inch, but probably like 3/16 of an inch. A good chunk of the blade flew off when that happened, which was my own fault. That's not a detriment to the knife. It's a very hardened steel. ZDP went in, I believe they hardened it in like the 63, 64 range. Not exactly sure what the K390, it's generally heat treated at, but it was just something I just was curious when I first got it and looked up. I probably should have done it with this. I'll have to look up what they generally run K390 at. So actually, if you know, I mean, let me know in the comments. That'd be great. But so this here, like I said, I've got it about a month ago, maybe a little over a month and a half, and this has been the knife I've been carrying solely and using. Well, I carry a bunch of knives just for testing review on the channel, but for the most part, the only knife that I really use is the one that I'm generally having clipped in my pocket, because the other knives that live in my pocket are the Duke, which I just keep in there just for, because it's so small and thin, you don't really even notice it in the pocket. I just love that thing. And then, which I recently did take out, I discussed in a previous video, the case sod buster. So I just had both of those. I just ended up taking the sod buster out. I will be, that may or may not be the next video I do a review on, but that will be coming very shortly. You know, having lived with it for a while, because that was in my pocket for a couple of months and got a good amount of usage. But this here, so it's actually funny talking about living in the pocket, because it had been so humid the last week. And I mean, it is summer now, obviously, but just the last week and a half, it's just been really humid, especially if I've had a few days up like 90-ish, 95. Starting to get better overall temperature-wise, but just being in the pocket and stuff, definitely picked up a little surface rust. I was able to remove it. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Just figure I'll knock out the specs on this real quick. I mean, overall, it's not going to be any different than when I did the other Endura 4 review. But if you haven't seen that yet, though I would, if you are curious between the two, I definitely recommend checking out the ZDP 189 version that I did the video on, because I honestly love both knives. And at some point, my plan is I want to do a video discussing just, well, end up being probably a few videos, but just discussing different levels of steel, or at least how in my mind, how I view them and see them, which, I mean, I guess in all honesty is, you know, mostly subjective, but with, you know, experience of using them all, some of the steels I've had for several years, and I'll have several examples of a lot of steels, but just between sharpening, using, and just, you know, how they hold up or whatever when you hit something the knife doesn't like, you know, does it chip, does it roll? But that'll all be future video and videos. So we'll just knock the specs out real quick. I did look up the weight. I don't have a scale, which I should probably get. Not just for this, just in general. It's just, I find being able to weigh things is sometimes advantageous. So we're looking at overall length. We're looking at about 8 3/4 inches. The handle length is looking about 4 7/8 inches, so a little under 5 inches. It's a long knife. And then from the handle to the tip of the blade, we're looking at just over 3 3/4 inches. So what would that be? 3 13/16. And then actual cutting edge, we're looking at just a hair under 3.5 inches. Just because, you get that extra little space up here. No troil. One thing I've been thinking about is just getting, because I've seen just people do it in general, is just getting like a really tiny round file and just start putting my own troils in, because it really makes a hell of a difference with sharpening. Definitely makes the process easier. And I've just noticed sometimes with Spyderco's, it can be a pain in the ass. For some reason, I don't know why, Spyderco just doesn't like putting troils on. But it definitely makes it a bit of a pain, because then you have to kind of hold it at a weird angle, and you don't want to, you're constantly running the stone into part of the ricasso, I guess. But definitely would alleviate those issues just by getting a tiny file. Something, even if it was like like an eighth of an inch or less, would be perfect. But if I end up doing that, I'll definitely bring that up and discuss in videos. And then the weight, because I said it, 'cause I just started rambling off about the lengths and stuff. The weight on this is just over 3.5 inches. When I looked it up, it said it's about 3.6 inches. So it's about an ounce more than a Delica. Like a Delica, I believe, is 2.4 ounces. I keep saying inches. It's a little over 3.5 ounces, 3.6 ounces. So it's a little over an ounce heavier than the Delica, which is 2.4 ounces. But more or less, I mean, the 0.1, 0.2. So basically, this is about 3.5 ounces compared to the Delica, which is about 2.5 ounces. So pretty light, especially considering the size of it, because this is similar in size to my Benchmade Contago. And that knife, oh god, that I think it's like a 7 ounce knife. It's heavy, for a knife. Definitely pulling your pants down while you're wearing it. But the way it's just built, it's just like it's an endura, so it endures. But it's a very well built knife, and what I like about it is, because the reason I got this was the steel, because I will at some point, I do want to get, but the Spyderco, the Police 4, but that knife goes for about $250. This is just over half the price, because this I picked up for about 130, which is the running price. Actually, on Amazon right now, it's going for 133, and also the ZDP 189 Endura 4 is also going for 133. So that's kind of cool. They're both the same price. And from what I've noticed so far, you're pretty much getting similar performance. They'll rust just as easily as the other. And these are just geared for edge retention. That's just like the main point of these steels is edge retention. And they both do it very well. And it is fun to play with. It is a backlock, so if you're not familiar with the Enduras, they are a backlock. So I know to some it's not as fun, they're not as fidgety, but you can get it pretty dialed in. Just messing with the pivot a bit. And, definitely I always like to keep a little oil in, especially being that this knife likes to rust. But just in that pivot area, because you don't really see it unless you're taking the knife apart. So it's good. I just like to keep a little oil in. But what's cool is, you need to have a little bit of finger strength and be able to kind of hold the knife awkwardly, but you can one-handed close it, without having to just do the little flick and then close. So it's cool. You can open it, obviously, in one motion. See, it doesn't always. But you can also close it in one motion. So, I mean, that's kind of cool. So it's not the strongest backlock. It's not like like the cold steel, the triad lock. That you'd probably break your finger before you get that closed just with the pinky. I mean, I'm sure some people can do it. I've tried it. I can't. I can barely get the thing to move, get the lever to move on it. But it is a cool thing that you can do with these. And for, like I said, the weight of it, it does have full steel liners, which is pretty cool. And then you have the standard FRN, the fiberglass reinforced nylon, I believe is what it stands for, which is good. It's not a bad material. It's not, G10, micarta, carbon fiber. But what's cool is if you are into those, you can buy aftermarket scales for these knives. So if you get the fancy steel, I mean, depending on what it is you want to get, but 50, 60, $70. So for around $200, you've got a very, what I would consider a very high end steel. I'd even say top shelf steel. And then for, maybe even under 200 bucks, depending on what it is you get, and you can get stainless steel handles and stuff for them. So even less than what it would have cost to get the, or at least for me, because like I said, I wanted to get the police four. At this time, I just couldn't justify spending all the extra money. But if you are in that same predicament as you could pick one of these up and then get a set of aftermarket scales and still come in under 200 bucks or right around 200 bucks. So that's kind of cool too. Because like I said, there are tons of companies. You can even off Amazon, you can find some, but even more if you go on the Google search somewhere. And there are a lot of companies that make aftermarket products for knives, which I think is pretty cool. Actually, I don't know, I'm getting ahead of myself now because I'm thinking, oh, I'll just get a bunch of aftermarket scales, throw them on the knives, which might be a thing. I might have to do that at some point. But very sweet knife. I really like, not emphasize enough. Like I said, going with the edge retention, it's definitely not, something that's just a quick sharpen. But depending on what you have for stones and stuff, I sharpen this on my DMT stones. But the next time I sharpen it, I'm gonna try it out on my wet stones, because obviously, like diamond just expedites the process with a lot of steels. It just because it removes steel so quickly. But I want to do the next time this actually needs a sharpen, which could be quite a while. I'm gonna try it on the stones and just kind of do a little, see how much of a difference there is in that sense. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it might be like a 5 minute difference. It might take an extra 5 minutes on the stones. Because what I've noticed a lot with sharpening these steels, or just kind of steels in general, I spend the most time on the first stone, like if I'm repairing a chip or a roll, or if I'm doing a little edge reprofiling. I'll probably spend, maybe 50% of the time of the total sharpening getting what I want in the shape and profile. And then you're pretty much just zipping through the other stones. Unless you're trying to go for like a, pristine mirror polish. But even then, unless you have the knife already where you want it, then you're just kind of zipping through the stones. So that is pretty cool. Definitely not as much for pain as Maximet, because that's what I'm thinking when I mentioned about that video. I'm probably going to do like ZDP 189, Maximet, S110V, and K390. Those are probably my, actually I might throw M4 in there too. But those are probably my like highest edge retaining steels, or what are known as, especially even just for sharpening, what they're in regards to just, being difficult or just taking a long time to sharpen, which is definitely the case, especially with the Maximet. Maximet is definitely a bear to sharpen. But same thing though, once I got it profiled where I wanted it, I was able to zip through the other diamond stones. Diamond definitely makes a big help. So like I said, so to fix it, because that was another part too, is so the little bits of surface rust. I mean, you might see little bits of, not the rust, but where it kind of started to patina. So there are a couple little spots, and then you may be able to pick up on this side a little bit, right above where my fingers. You can kind of see the little dot. So those, I got a little bit of rust. Now the patina itself, I don't mind. I actually kind of like it. I've messed around with forcing patinas before, and I'm not saying I'd never do it again, because I've done it. I mean, the last thing I think I did it on, it was probably like over a year, 2 years ago. But with stuff like that, I like just kind of earning the patina. Though I have been thinking about maybe doing it with this, just more because I've seen just some pictures of people that have done that, and I just think with that kind of dark finish, I think it would be kind of cool, to be honest. So, but it's something to think about. I don't want to, jump on and do it yet. But to take care of it, there are a couple things you can do. So I get bugs buzzing. So one thing, of course, you can get at most places, or you can pick up for like $5-10 at most online. You can get the rust erasers, which is basically just like, it's literally just like an eraser, but it's an abrasive, and it works well. It will definitely dig out the rust, and it does it very efficiently, but it's almost too efficient in that, because I've noticed with other knives that I've used them on, it leaves, you definitely get like swirl marks. So depending on where the rust is, like if it's on the spine of the knife, it's really easy. You don't really notice. You just, whatever, do a couple. Once you get the spot of rust out, you just do the passes, kind of blend it in. But what I've noticed though is, so if I did one of these spots with the rust eraser, you would have these swirl marks, but because how abrasive it is, I don't know what the grit rating is, but it's definitely a lower rating than whatever the flat grind was used, whatever grit they used to put of the belts to put the flat grind. It's definitely a lot coarser than that. So even if you're going in the same direction, because if you look at it in the light, you can see the direction the belt was going. So the only alternative, if you did use that, unless you didn't care, unless it doesn't like bother you just having those marks, but for me it like kind of does. So it would just turn into, I would just have to use that rust eraser on the whole blade, which could be fine, but it's not a very nice finish. But what I have been using, what I have done, because I've also done it because I've had a little bit of rust I've gotten on the ZDP before. What I use are my strops, and they work great. Now the rust eraser, like I said, will take it right down, so it will take the patina off. So I guess that's the give and take. If you don't want patina, you can go with the rust eraser, and I mean it won't take long if you want to blend it all in. It'll just be a much coarser finish on the blade. But with using the strops, it took it right out. The rust, after probably a couple minutes just going through, because I have a few different, I don't know, grits of strop, with different fineness. So I just started with my most coarse one and worked up to the finest one. And yeah, I mean, it put a little bit of a polish on the blade. It did leave the patina, but that's what I kind of like. I like having a little bits of patina on it. But it works really well. I mean, of course, so when you're stropping the edge, you have it at the angle, so you want it perfectly flat. You do want to be careful and not put too much pressure, because I've done before is I'll, have a knife, it's really sharp, notice the rust, throw it on, but if you put too much pressure, the leather will roll up on the edge and you'll actually dull your edge. So you definitely want to be careful and use light pressure, and just, probably a little more than the weight of the knife, and just be mindful that, so that the leather doesn't roll up over on the edge. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but you'll just have to throw it on the stones quick or something, or, just whatever your finest grit stone is, or whatever your sharpening preferred method is. You might just need to take like 30 seconds, a minute on whatever the finest level is that you use, and then just drop it again after. So, I mean, that's definitely an option too. Or if it's like being stubborn, you're like, whatever, screw it, I just want to get this out, then yeah, you go to town, and then you might just have to sharpen it again really quick. But I found that to be pretty effective. So that's what I've actually been doing since, I don't know, a couple years now. But I like it a lot. But what is cool too, I noticed, because, a stainless knife can still get a little bit of rust. With the stainless knife, I mean, I haven't had severe rust, so I guess I can't speak for that. But for minor surface rust on a stainless knives, I've noticed it just takes the rust right out. And because it's stainless, you don't get a patina. The whole blade will be a little more polished, but you won't notice that there was ever rust there. Whereas here you can be like, oh yeah, there was, there's some patina there. I would recommend though, just like with the rust eraser, to do both sides. Now the knife made it easy for me because I had a little bit of rust on both sides, so I had to do them anyway. But you can just do like a quick, even if you just use the finest compound that you have, and just do the opposite side. If there's no rust, just give it, I don't know, 10, 15 passes. Then it'll, you'll match up pretty well, and you probably won't even notice. Nobody else will notice. This is more of a for you thing than for anybody else. But very, very cool. I know that this review kind of covered a few things, because it's not just quite a Endura 4 review, because I kind of already did one. and I just, I have enough issues with repeating myself. I don't want to make too many repetitive videos. I mean, if I ever get more Enduras, which I probably will, I just am really, really falling in love with the Enduras. Like, I loved them already anyway, but after getting the K390, and it could just be the K390, just really, just adding to that level of excitement for the knife. But as soon as I saw that they made a K390 Endura, because I don't think they've been out that long. Excuse me. Probably, definitely less than a year from what I've noticed, but I don't think they've been out more than 6 months. I myself only, probably learned about it a month before I picked it up, and it's an amazing knife, and especially too because it's an Endura, so it is very comfortable, and then having that long handle, because even holding it, you can see there's, probably a little less than an inch holding, poking out the back, but it's cool because the way that it's set up, I mean, you have a couple positions you can hold it in, so if you want to choke up on it, they have the little finger ridge and stuff, so you can bring right up on it. Or it also works too. It's just kind of like the perfect, because then if you're just, choked back, I guess. But, if you're just making a quick cut, you can just slice right through things and then you're done. Or if you need to be a little more precise, you can choke up on it. But it's really cool. And just even the way that they grind the knife, because it is fairly thick. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick. Maybe a little quite less, maybe like 1.1, whereas 1/8 of an inch, I believe, is, or 0.11, whereas 1/8 of an inch is 0.125 inches. So, a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch, but it does come into a very thin tip. So that I actually kind of like too, for the most part, because I mean, I'm relatively gentle with my knives. Now, a knife with a blade this thin, very similar like with the paramilitary too, because I know, I'll like open paint cans and shit like that with knives. With a blade this thin, I wouldn't. I mean, if it was M4, I might take a gamble with it. Or if it was like 3V or something, I'd risk it. But that's me. But I just like that it lends itself. It's gives you the ability to, do your rougher, harder work up towards the back of the blade where it's nice and thick. You're cutting through really thick stuff. But, if you're just starting a really thin cut, or you just need to do just a little, like a little, just a little lance with something, that's where I really like having a thinner tip. So, again, a lot of this stuff is subjective, but I guess all of it is in general. It's like if someone made video about their favorite color, or just made a video saying that, blue's the best color, it's subjective because that's their favorite color. But someone else could make a color about green or purple or whatever. Most of this stuff, I guess, with knives, cars, anything, it's all subjective, so I don't know. You can take my opinion for what it's worth to you, which may be nothing, and that's fine. But I really want to thank you for coming along. I would hope to, or I hope to hear from you if you guys have one of these already. Even if it's not the K390, if you get the ZDP, or if you get the VG10, which I do want to pick one of those up, just so it's like, I have the base standard model, and then, can compare them. And maybe I'll do that like one day if I get one of those, or if I get more Enduras, we'll just do like an Endura nerd out video. But really cool knife. I really think if anybody gets it, you won't regret it, especially at the price. I know it's not the cheapest knife in the world, but for what you can pay, I think it's a pretty good compromise. It's a well-built knife. It'll definitely put some work in for you. And, if you don't mind taking a little more time to sharpen, I think K390 is a perfect way to go. I really do. I am really, really starting to love K390. And also just because I do like that, that it's able to rust. But I like that it can build a patina. I love just on carbon knives seeing the patina build on it. But let me know what your thoughts are, or what knife you guys would like to see me do next. Please remember to subscribe, like the video. Please check out the other videos too, especially the ZDP 189 one. Okay, I definitely go into more detail just with the Endura 4 itself. Of course, I talk about the ZDP 189. And then at some point, I will do a video discussing all these different steels. But remember to keep carving, stay sharp, and peace.